I've never seen that before. Well done. A little change of pace for the evening. Thursday was the appearance day of Srivasa Thakura, or Srivasa Pandit, and I thought it would be nice to speak about him 2 days after his appearance day. Srivasa Pandit is an important member of Lord Chaitanya's eternal associates. He is in his role in the Panchatattva. He's the Jiva who's Shuddha Bhakta, or Narada Muni in Krishna's Gaura Leela. In the Lord Chaitanya and 5 features, sometimes Prabhupada used that term, the Panchatattva. We know the mantra, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Do you know the mantra? Can you say?
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Sadguru.
Sing it. That was very nice. Try it.
Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya
You had a good start. No, he had a different melody. Do you know the melody? He had a different one.
Singing the bhajan, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo, right? That's how you.
That's how you get. But the same melody can be used for the Panchatattva mantra. Okay. Sri Krishna Chaitanya is Krishna himself. Prabhu Nityananda, his first expansion, or the principle of Sankarshan. Vishnu Tattva, Krishna's first expansion, Sankarshan. Sri Advaita is also Vishnu Tattva. Lord Chaitanya, and this side, they're Vishnu Tattva. And in the Vishnu Tattva category, the Purusha avatar, Mahavishnu. We saved you a seat over here, Mataji. Front row seat. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, his first expansion, Sankarshan, or Balaram, or Sri Nityananda, and then Purusha avatars, or Mahavishnu, or Sri Advaita. That's this side. And then this side, Gadadhar is Shakti Tattva, Radharani, or Sri Gadadhar. And Srivasa is Jiva Tattva, pure devotee, Narada Muni. We'll hear some more about his mood as Narada Muni in the course of this evening. And then everybody else, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All of the devotees, the Vrinda, the assembled devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Here's some statements from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela. There are innumerable devotees of the Lord, of whom Srivasa Thakur is the foremost. That's in the Panchatattva, devotee of the Lord. The presence of Srivasa Thakur and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Gaura Leela began from the very beginning. That is, on his appearance day, Srivasa Thakur and his wife Malini came to receive the Lord at the time of his appearance and worshipped him. Others did also. The mention specifically is the wife of Sri Advaita, and she's the one that gave him the name Nimai. You know the meaning? Nimai. You know who it refers to, right? Nimai Pandit is Lord Chaitanya. Nimai. Nice name. Nimai. Nimai was given by Advaita Acharya's wife because Mahaprabhu was born underneath a neem tree. You know what a neem tree is? It's a kind of tree. And it's there's different purposes. Neem produces neem leaves, and neem leaves are very bitter. Bitter neem leaves. And neem leaves are good for digestion. So it's common in Bengal, one of the first preparations before you eat a meal is you take neem, kind of like a neem chutney. It's really bitter. And it helps to promote digestion. It has antiseptic properties also, neem. But that's not why she named him Nimai, because neem is understood to be, there would be protection, because the earlier sons of Mother Sachi, 6 of her earlier sons died shortly after their birth, so may he be protected by the neem under which he was born. Thus, Nimai. And the name stuck. Nimai. Srivasa Thakur and his wife Malini. She's a celebrated personality in Lord Chaitanya's Leela. Anybody here likes Gaura Leela and knows a nice pastime at the home of Srivasa, where Malini was taking care of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda? Anyone know that pastime? You know the pastime? Can you give her the microphone? This is the audience interaction night. If you don't know, you don't have to say. Do the best you can.
Good Maharaj, I don't know if you're referring to the same one where Lord Nityananda goes and he says, I'm hungry. And then Mother Malini prepares and he says, I want to sit on your lap and then feed me. Is
Yes,
that
that one? And then the crow?
Yeah.
What happened with the crow? Malini was preparing arti paraphernalia.
And the crow comes and
Yeah.
takes.
You know the rest of the story? She was preparing arti paraphernalia, and a crow flew in and took away the Achman cup.
Yeah. And then,
And so she started to cry.
yes. And Lord Nityananda goes out and calls the crow and he comes back and puts it back.
And flew away. Then the order, bring that Achman cup back. Immediately, he ordered the crow, and the crow flew in the window, put it right back where it was, and out the window again. And so she, Malini, understood prior to this, but just reiterated, you're the personality of Godhead. You control everyone and everything. So having a crow bringing back an Achman cup is nothing for you. She said many other nice things. So Malini is an important personality, along with her good husband, Srivasa Thakura. Here's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, a little background. Gora Godadesh Dipika is a who's who book. It's written by Kavi Karnapur, and everyone in Gaura Leela he identifies who their counterpart is in Krishna Leela. Very interesting. Srivasa Pandit, or Srivasa Thakur, is described as an incarnation of Narada Muni, and Sri Ram Pandit, his younger brother, is said to be an incarnation of Parvat Muni, a great friend of Narada's. Well, in this case, they were brothers. Older brother, younger brother. Narada Muni, Parvat Muni. Srivasa Pandit's wife, Malini, is celebrated as an incarnation of the nurse, Ambika, who fed Lord Krishna with her breast milk. And his niece, Narayani, the mother of Thakur Vrindavan Das, the author of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, was the sister of Ambika in Krishna Leela. We also understand from the description of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat that after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's acceptance of the sannyas order, Srivasa Pandit left Navadvip, possibly because of feelings of separation, and domiciled in Kumarahata. Their two brothers were Sripati and Sriniti. Doesn't say who they are in this Chaitanya Charitamrita passage. So there are four brothers, and they lived like an classic extended family situation. The house of Srivasa Pandit means the extended, because he was the elder brother. Srivas, Sri Ram, Sripati, Sriniti. And sometimes, just in case you like at some point in time want to start reading Gaura Leela, you'll find the name Ramai. Ramai is the same as Sri Ram Pandit, his next younger brother. So Ramai, or Sri Ram. So they're very close in the extended family. We're going to hear some pastimes about them. Prabhupada writes, all of Navadvip was surcharged with Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, and its headquarters were situated at the house of Srivasa Thakur and Sri Advaita Prabhu, two of his chief householder disciples. These two learned heads of the Brahmana community were the most ardent supporters of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Now, the headquarters were actually Srivasa Thakur's home, and you say the house of Srivasa Pandit is this big establishment of many, walled-in area. It's still there. That the house of Srivasa Pandit is one of the celebrated places in Navadvip. Shantipur, or the house of Advaitacharya, is quite some distance. There were meetings there, but the Sankirtan took place at the house of Srivasa Pandit. We'll hear shortly. And there's this phrase, Avirbhav. Avirbhav. It's a manifestation of the Lord that appears even though he is personally not present. For example, when Srivasa Thakura performed Sankirtan, everyone felt the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even in his absence. So an Avirbhav example is during the life of Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami was a householder, young, but he didn't want to be in this worldly situation. He wanted to be with Lord Chaitanya in Puri. He tried many times to escape. His father captured him, had officers forcibly bring him back home. So he then understood, I need the mercy of Lord Nityananda. He went to Panihati when Lord Nityananda and his associates were there. This recent event that was celebrated at New Panihati Dham in Atlanta, every year they have a festival celebrating the Panihati festival. And Lord Nityananda instructed him to feed everybody with chipped rice and yogurt, etc. So when that festival was going on, there was a wonderful kirtan, and an Avirbhav manifestation of Lord Chaitanya came, which everyone saw, but he was in Puri. But because of the ecstatic love of the devotees in kirtan and the distribution of prasad, that he came, he danced in the kirtan, he and Lord Nityananda engaged in playful activities together. They took from one another's pot and forced it in their mouth, and so forth and so on. And then Lord Chaitanya allowed Raghunath Das to come before him, pleading for his mercy. So in Avirbhav manifestation, it's a nice example. But on a regular basis, even when Mahaprabhu was absent, he would appear to be present in this Avirbhav manifestation. So it's from when there's ecstatic love, Lord Chaitanya appears. You've heard this before, that when there's the congregational chanting of the holy name, Lord Chaitanya appears. There was this nice historical event. Prabhupada was being very kind. The devotees in New York City at one time wanted from 26 2nd Avenue to get people of New York to know about Prabhupada. So they rented a very expensive theater and tried to sell tickets to get people to come to hear Srila Prabhupada. And there was something like 4 or 5 people that came. And the devotees were really, really disappointed and really, really apologetic and profusely apologized to Prabhupada. And he cheered them up saying, didn't you see Narada Muni, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda? They were all there. After the initiation of Lord Chaitanya by Ishwara Puri, Lord Chaitanya started in the mood of extreme devotion to Krishna. And it began, one of the places it began was at the house of Srivasa Thakura. I mean, I like the phrase, the house of Srivasa Thakura. It's like a palace. It's like, kind of like the house of Kashi Mishra. It's this gigantic thing. It's not like, this. House in Naperville. Anyway, the house of Srivasa Thakura. So the kirtans began. But the way that they began, it was just the inner circle only. It started like that. And the persons who weren't being allowed to come in because they weren't devotees became very envious. And when envious people don't get what they want, one of the things they do is they start rumors. Maybe you've heard some rumors about some people. Sometimes it happens. So the brahmanas started making rumors. They're drunk. They're wild. And then another one circulated that the king has heard about these loud music things going on at the house of Srivasa, and the king is going to come and take the whole of Navadvip and knock it into the Ganges River because of this Srivasa. So it's giving him a bad name, trying. So Srivasa was in anxiety. What if the king has heard? What if the king were to come? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew of the rumors, and he knew of Srivasa's anxiety, the way it's described. One morning, he was walking along the Ganges, and he saw some cows on the other side of the Ganges River. And he entered into a profound mood of being Krishna. And he went straight away to the house of Srivasa. And Srivasa was in the middle of his puja. Anybody that does puja knows you don't interrupt your puja. It's kind of like when you're chanting Gayatri, you don't stop chanting Gayatri because somebody knocks on your door or your phone rings or something, or talks to you, you don't stop. Lord Chaitanya came, Srivasa was in the middle of his puja, and Lord Chaitanya sat right on the altar and said, Srivasa, worship me. And Srivasa stood up and stopped his worship and worshipped Lord Chaitanya. And then in very bold, strong tone, Lord Chaitanya said, Srivasa, give up your anxiety. He was taking the role, instead of a devotee of Krishna, the mood of Krishna, which started with seeing the cows on the opposite side of the Ganges. There is nothing to fear. That the armies of the king and the king are not coming. And if the king were to want to come, I would go straight away to the king. And I would challenge the king. You would take all your mullahs and all your learned scholars, and you get them to chant the name of Allah. You get just ordinary people, and they won't be able to do it. But I'll get them. I'll take your soldiers and all your armies and have them chant in ecstatic love. All your children, all your families, and you will see, Srivasa, have no doubt. Bring your niece, bring Narayani. Narayani was a little girl, niece. Doesn't say which of the four brothers was, or the other three brothers, was her father, but Narayani was just a little girl, little girl. And Lord Chaitanya ordered her, Narayani, chant in ecstasy. And she started crying and dancing and calling Krishna's name. She became mad in an ecstasy of love of God. And Srivasa fell at his feet and said, okay, I accept you're the personality of God. There's nothing to worry about. I've given up all fear. I've taken complete shelter of you. And in this way, the kirtans continued in the house of Srivasa Pandit. One evening, another attempt to defame Lord Chaitanya was to defame his devotee, Srivasa. So here's from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regularly led congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the house of Srivasa Thakura every night for 1 full year. This ecstatic chanting was performed with the doors closed, so that the non-believers who came to make fun could not gain entrance. Thus, the non-believers almost burned to ashes and died out of envy. To retaliate, they planned in various ways to give trouble to Srivasa Thakur. So one of the ways, Gopal Chapala, or Brahmana, was one. He placed outside the gate of Srivasa Thakur's residence paraphernalia for worshipping Durga. And the list of the ingredients, the upper portion of a plantain leaf, paraphernalia for worship of such as Oda Pula, turmeric, vermilion, red sandalwood, and rice. He placed a pot of wine beside all this. It was to tell all the people in the public, they're not worshiping Vishnu, they're drunk, worshiping goddess. Srivasa Thakur was told about this. He went outside. He called for all the respectable gentlemen of the neighborhood and smilingly addressed them as follows. Gentlemen, every night I worship the goddess Bhavani. Since the paraphernalia for the worship is present here now, all you respectable brahmanas and members of the higher caste can understand my position. They understood what he was doing. He was smiling. All the assembled gentlemen exclaimed, "What is this? Who has performed such mischievous activities?" They called for a sweeper who threw all the items of worship far away and cleansed the place. After 3 days, leprosy attacked Gopal Chapala, and blood oozed from the sores all over his body. Incessantly covered with germs and insects biting him all over his body, he felt unbearable pain, burning and distress. Gopal Chapala left the village. "My dear nephew," this is Lord Chaitanya chastising him, "I am your maternal uncle in our village relationship. Please see how greatly this attack of leprosy has afflicted me. As an incarnation of God, you are delivering so many fallen souls. I am also greatly unhappy, fallen soul. Kindly deliver me by your mercy." Gopal Chapal asking Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu's reply, "O sinful person, envious of pure devotees, I shall not deliver you. Rather, I shall have you bitten by these germs for many millions of years. You have made Srivasa Thakur appear to have been worshipping goddess Bhavani. Simply for this offense, you will have fallen down into hellish life for 10 million births." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after accepting a renounced order, went to Jagannath Puri and then came back to Kulia. Kulia is not Navadvip. Kulia is today's city of Navadvip, Kulia. Then that sinful man took shelter of the Lord, who told him, "You have committed an offense at the lotus feet of Srivasa Thakur. You must beg for his mercy, and if he gives you blessings, and you do not commit such sins again, you will be freed from these reactions." Gopal Chapal, second time around. Then the Brahmana, Gopal Chapal, went to Srivasa Thakur and took shelter of his lotus feet. At Srivasa Thakur's mercy, he was freed from all sinful reactions. Lesson: don't offend great personalities, don't offend brahmanas, and if there is an offense, even the Supreme Lord isn't going to forgive you. You need the forgiveness of that person. So we're still in Navadvip. Mahaprabhu is still in Navadvip, and he is performing kirtan every evening, and one particular evening he did the same thing that he did with Srivasa some years before, or some time before. He sat on the throne, on the altar, and said, same thing, worship me. He told them, get Ganges water and perform Abhishek. So it was a full, they did Abhishek, they bathed him, they dressed him, they placed ornaments on him and garlands on him, and did a full worship of Lord Chaitanya. And then one by one, Lord Chaitanya would call the devotees forward and identify who they are in Krishna Lila, who they are eternally. It's a very nice section. Chaitanya Bhagavat's very, very, very nice. Here's a passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita that explains. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed a maidservant named Dukhi with the name Sukhi. So in the house of Srivasa, there were some assistants. So he called her forward because she was always sad. Then he changed her name from Dukhi to Sukhi. He called for Kolavechar Sridhar and showed him his Mahaprakash. He then called for Murari Gupta and showed him his feature as Lord Ramachandra. That's the Lord Chaitanya's feature. He offered his blessings to Haridas Thakur, and at this time he also asked Advaita Prabhu to explain the Bhagavad Gita as it is. That's Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Gitara Satyapata, and showed special favor to Mukunda. So this is a very wonderful pastime. It's very, very elaborately discussed. Pages and pages and pages of each person, calling each person forward and telling them some secrets about their life. Try and remember some of those secrets. There was one devotee who had several daughters, and Lord Chaitanya told the devotee about a pastime that happened even before Lord Chaitanya was born. The pastime was, there was fear of some Muslims coming to invade Navadvip. And he was afraid for the safety of his daughters, that they might be molested. So he went to the Ganges, but there was no boat to cross the Ganges. Then suddenly there was a boat, and the boat took him across the Ganges to a safe place. Lord Chaitanya said, I was that boatman. I came and took you across the Ganges. Do you remember? And of course, he remembered because it was saving, the protecting and saving the sanctity of his daughters. So he fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet. And like that, he would reveal his divinity to different devotees. Because before, obviously, he was concealing his divinity. He was a devotee, but now he's revealing one by one by one. It's a very wonderful section. And all at the house of Srivasa. One evening, when Kirtan was going on, Srivasa got word that his son had died in a room in the back of the house. Srivasa said, don't say anything. Don't disturb Mahaprabhu's Kirtan. That was more important to him than the death of his son. After some time, the Kirtan subsided, and Lord Chaitanya said, I'm not feeling ecstasy. Has there been some calamity in the house? One night, while Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing with his devotees at the house of Srivasa Thakur, one of Srivasa Thakur's sons, who was suffering from sun disease, died. Srivasa Thakur did not allow anyone to cry, for he did not want the kirtan going on in his house to be disturbed. This kirtan continued without a sound of lamentation. When the kirtan was over, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could understand the incident, declared, there must have been some calamity in this house. When he was then informed of the death of Srivasa Thakur's son, he expressed his regret, saying, why was this news not given to me before? So he went straight to the room where the dead son of Srivasa Thakur was lying. He placed his hand on his chest and asked him, my dear boy, why are you leaving the house of Srivasa Thakur? The boy sat up. The dead son immediately replied, I was living in this house as long as I was destined to live here. Now that the time is over, I am going elsewhere according to your direction. I am your eternal servant, a dependent living being. I must act according to your desire. Beyond your desire, I cannot do anything, for I have no such power. And he laid back down. and went away. Hearing these words of the dead son, all the members of Srivasa Thakura's family received transcendental knowledge. Thus, there was no cause for lamentation. Lord Chaitanya assured Srivasa Thakur, "You have lost one son, but Nityananda Prabhu and I are your eternal sons. We shall never be able to give up your company." It's not a major, this is a major pastime. As not major section is some mention of the Ashtakaliya Leela. Ashtakaliya Leela means during Krishna's pastimes, there are 8 times of the day where particular pastimes are performed corresponding to those 8 times of the day. The reference is here. In ecstasy, the Lord asked Srivasa Thakur to deliver his flute. But Srivasa Thakur replied, "Your flute has been stolen away by the gopis." Thus, Srivasa described transcendental mellows of the pastimes of Sri Vrindavan. In the morning, the Lord embraced Srivasa Thakur and satisfied him. There is a Nrsingadev Leela of Lord Chaitanya that came at the house of Srivasa. One day, the Lord ordered Srivasa Thakur to recite the 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the holy name of Lord Nrsinga, he became fully absorbed in thought. In the mood of Lord Nrsingadev, Lord Chaitanya ran through the city streets, club in hand, ready to kill all the atheists. Seeing appearing very fierce in the ecstasy of Lord Nrsinga, people ran from the street and fled here and there, afraid of his anger. Seeing the people so afraid, the Lord came to his external senses and thus returned to the house of Srivasa Thakur and threw away the club. He said to Srivasa, "I stopped, since causing fear among people is an offense." Srivasa replied, "Anyone who takes your holy name vanquishes 10 million offenses immediately. There was no offense in your appearing as Nrsingadev. Rather, any man who saw you in that mood was immediately liberated from the bondage of material existence." After saying this, Srivasa Thakur worshipped the Lord, who was then greatly satisfied, and returned to his home. And one more incident, celebrated incident, in Navadvip town. Now Navadvip town, then it was Kulia. There was a Pandit named Devananda Pandit, who was a reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was very scholarly. But here's the way that Prabhupada is rendered. Devananda was expounding the Mayavadi interpretation. Srivasa Thakur was once present, and when he began to cry, Devananda's students drove him away. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Devananda, he chastised him severely because of his Mayavad interpretation of Srimad Bhagavatam. At that time, Devananda had little faith in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an incarnation of Krishna, but one night, Vikreshwara Pandit was his guest. And when he explained the science of Krishna, Devananda was convinced about the identity of Lord Chaitanya. Thus, he was induced to explain Srimad Bhagavatam according to the Vaishnava understanding. So here's a little bit elaboration of that little passage from Adi Leela. When Srivasa was crying, and in some places it says he was rolling on the ground, he was just hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, although the person speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam wasn't a realized soul. Just the passages of Srimad Bhagavatam set him into a state of ecstasy. He lost sense of what was going on around him. The students of Devananda didn't understand, so they picked him up and dropped him outside of the assembly area. And Srivasa didn't feel offended. He just went back to his home. Back to his home means he had to cross the Ganges and back to Srivasa Thakur's home. And he just continued with his contemplations on the topics of Krishna that he'd heard from the Bhagavatam. Some time passed. And Vikreshwara Pandit, about a week ago, more than a week ago, 10 days ago or so, it was the appearance day of Vikreshwara Pandit, last Sunday. So it was a week ago. Who is Vikreshwara Pandit in Krishna Lila? In Krishna Lila, Vikreshwara Pandit is Aniruddha. Aniruddha is Krishna's, the son of Pradyumna, or in the Chaturvyuha, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So Vikreshwara Pandit is a very important person. And what he was known for, mainly, he was known for several things, but he was known for his dancing. Lord Chaitanya danced also, but Vikreshwara Pandit was an ecstatic dancer, one time, 3 days non-stop. Not like, graceful dancing. Mad ecstasy dancing for 72 hours. I'll challenge you. Try dancing. Try being in ecstasy for a moment, but try dancing ecstatically, extended time. It's nice. It's easy. When the kirtan is very, very jubilant. My thoughts are going to many situations where there have been jubilant kirtans. I'll share one. That was, I wasn't there. Revati Raman Prabhu from the Tirupati temple. He courageously, heroically, somehow built a wonderful temple and guest house at the bottom of the Tirupati hill, almost entirely. I mean, there were some donations and loans and things. A beautiful temple, very elegantly decorated, etc., etc. Very large kirtan hall. By selling books along the path going up the Tirupati temple. The TTD folks gave him permission for some stalls, and he sold books. And from the book distribution, largely, almost entirely, he built that temple. And then when the temple opening came, he invited the chief person in the TTD to just come and for the occasion and grace the occasion and say a few words, and they could go back up the hill. He came, and he stayed a long time. Revati Raman told me. He stayed a long time. He was very surprised because it's a businessman. He's just going to, cut the ribbon, doing the formalities. He stayed because there were hundreds of well-educated, well-dressed Indian youth chanting and dancing at kirtan for hours. He had never seen anything like it. Because, the Sri Vaishnava pujaris don't get people to chant and dance in ecstasy. They do what they do. They do it very wonderfully. Then he came back the next day. Then he came back the next day. And on national television, the third day, Radhika Raman said, this is most wonderful. What we've been unable to do, the Hare Krishna people have been able to do. The youth who are going in the direction of worldly pleasures are singing the names of the Supreme Lord and spoke the glories of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. It's in our scriptures, and this process is transformational. He didn't have to say something like that. He wasn't saying anything bad about themselves. But he was saying his appreciation for the chanting and dancing process, which is Lord Chaitanya's process. And chief in the dancing department Vikreshwara Pandit, chief, best. So one time, Vikreshwara Pandit was in Navadvip, then Kulia, but Navadvip. And there was kirtan and he was dancing ecstatically. Not just like ball dance. He was dancing ecstatically. And when that happened, a crowd formed. Devananda Pandit came along. He is a celebrated VIP. He's a big speaker, Pandit, learned person. He saw the dancing and he saw the crowd, so he had a walking stick, and with his walking stick, he held the walking stick up and had the crowd step back so Vikreshwara Pandit could dance. He was charmed by his demeanor, not only his dancing. And when the kirtan was over, Devananda Pandit invited Vikreshwara Pandit to come to his home for a meal. And when Vikreshwara Pandit came to his home for a meal, his association was so elevating that Devananda Pandit requested him, please stay with me, and I understand that you are very knowledgeable in the Bhagavatam. Can I hear the Bhagavatam from you? It was a transformation experience. And from that association, he then also not only understood Bhagavatam for the first time, but he understood who was Lord Chaitanya. So he became very devoted to Lord Chaitanya, whereas before he had no idea. So then, again, when this is the celebrated, when Lord Chaitanya was on his way to Vrindavan, we often hear that he went to Ramakeli to meet Rupa and Sanatan. But he also made a stop in Kulia, and there he gave pardon to Gopal Chapul and Devananda Pandit. So he said to Devananda Pandit, same thing. You have to go straight to Srivasa and beg his forgiveness, and then you can be forgiven. Because otherwise, this will be a stain, lifetime after lifetime in your life, for offending a great devotee. Now, he wasn't the one that tossed him out, but he didn't say anything because he didn't have any understanding of who Srivasa Thakur was and the ecstasy that he was experiencing just from hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So after some time, now we're with Mahaprabhu in Puri, and during the Rath Yatra, Srivasa had a nice service. He was assigned as one of the dancers during the kirtan parties. When the king beheld the dancing, Srivasa Thakur, standing in front of him, became ecstatic as he saw the dancing of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Seeing Srivasa Thakur standing before the king, Harichandana touched Srivasa with his hand and requested him to step aside. The king, excuse me, but the king is right behind you. And could you move aside so the king can see Lord Chaitanya dance? And Srivasa was absorbed in Lord Chaitanya and his dancing. Absorbed in watching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dance, Srivasa could not understand why he was being touched and pushed. After he was pushed again and again, he became angry. Srivasa Thakur slapped Harichandan to stop him from pushing. In turn, this made Harichandan angry. Harichandan is like a bodyguard for the king. As the angered Harichandan was about to speak to Srivasa Thakur, Prataparudra personally stopped him. King Prataparudra said, "You are very fortunate, for you have been graced by the touch of Srivasa Thakur. I am not so fortunate. You should feel obliged to him." Another nice pastime. We're almost crossing the finish line now. Hera Panchami. What's Hera Panchami? Hera Panchami is on the fourth day after the Rath Yatra, the goddess Lakshmi starts to get irritated. All right, you went away, but come back. It's because she knows. And so it's a big festival. So the Utsav Murti of Lakshmi leaves the temple. she's placed in a highly valuable palanquin, jewels and diamonds and precious stones studded all over this palanquin, and loud music. She's coming out in an angry mood to tell Jagannath, you come back right now. So, Vijayotsava, the festival of Lakshmi Devi's voyage. Now this is taken from a publication that Madhavananda puts together. He sent this out. This is compliments of him. This is a pujari inside the Singhadwar gate at the Jagannath Mandir, dressing the deity, not in the temple deity, but dressing the deity outside in preparation for this festival. The deity inside, Lakshmi, this is a close-up of her. On the fourth day of the Rath Yatra, she's put on this special throne, carried outside. They take this circuitous route. She's going to Gundicha, but this doesn't just go along the Grand Road. They go round and around over to Narendra Sarovar and here and there. And big festivities and, horns and music and a lot of thousands of people. She's going to order Jagannath come back. Srivasa Thakura was observing. Enjoying the mood of Narada Muni, he smiled and told Swarup Damodar, just see how opulent my goddess of fortune is. Your gopis are engaged in boiling milk and churning yogurt, but my mistress, the goddess of fortune, sits on a throne made of jewels and gems. He's in the mood of Narada Muni, who likes the opulence of Bhagavan. There's a really long section just before that where Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar are engaged in. Lord Chaitanya is asking Swarup Damodar to explain what's going on here. And he's explaining the mood of the goddess of fortune, he's explaining the mood of the gopis and Srimati Radharani, and the wonderful mood of Radharani in comparison to the goddess of fortune. Very, very, very elevated discussion. Srivasa Thakur is on another wavelength. He's just enjoying Lakshmi going out in an angry mood. So Lord Chaitanya smiles and says to Srivasa, Srivasa, you're in the mood of Narada Muni. Swarup Damodar, what do you have to say about this? And Swarup Damodar smiles and describes essentially, in different language, the same message as that long verse that comes in Brahma Samhita. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purushu Kalpa Taravo Druma Bhumis Chintamani. Is that long verse? He unpacks it and describes the opulence of Vrindavan. And the opulence of Vrindavan far surpasses the opulence of the goddess of fortune. Although its simplicity, it far surpasses in opulence. Hearing Swarup Damodar's narration of the opulence of Braja, Srivasa Thakur then began to dance in ecstatic love. He vibrated sounds by slapping his armpits with the palms of his hands. I don't know about that one. But apparently that's a sign of ecstasy. And he laughed very loudly. He was approving the superior understanding of Swarup Damodar, or the superior opulence of Vraja to the opulence of Vaikuntha. Because Purushottam Kshetra is the same opulence as in Dwaraka, when Krishna resided in Dwaraka. He's manifesting there the Purusha Uttama, the form of the Supreme Person. And in Puri, it's the form of the Supreme Person with all of his opulence, but in the mood of separation from Vrindavan. That's why Lord Chaitanya remained there. And the Rath Yatra signifies Jagannath leaving that position of opulence and going to Vrindavan. Gundicha representing Vrindavan. And Lakshmi, it's a beautiful, beautiful description. Srivasa is explaining the mood. Lakshmi is ordering, you come back. Krishna wants to be, or Jagannath wants to be in Vrindavan. Lakshmi is ordering him, you come back. The jealous love. It's just a very, very beautiful description. So this is our Srivas in his deity form in Mayapur. And we come, at least I've come to know about Srivas Pandit by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. In fact, anything to know about spiritual practice and Bhagavatam and everything comes from, for me, comes from Srila Prabhupada, probably for all of us. Getting a proper understanding of who is Krishna, who is Lord Chaitanya, who are we, what the process of bhakti is. So there we are. This is a little presentation on the life of Srivas Thakur and his role, some simple passages from Chaitanya Charitamrita and his role in Lord Chaitanya's life. So let's see if there's some questions or comments. Yes.
It's very beautiful to hear, Gaur Leela Maharaj. There's one pastime of Srivas Thakur that I was actually looking forward to hear you.
Oh.
The one about when he was expressing how he's fully surrendered and doesn't need to try to extraneous endeavors to support his family, maintain his family. And he knocks the ground 3 times with his stick. I don't remember all the details of that pastime, but I was hoping to hear about that if you'd like to share. And then the other question I had
it's very faint. The memory on that pastime is very faint. Maybe for another evening I'll have time to look that up. Because tomorrow is Sunday program. It's not going to be appropriate. Maybe midday. Okay. All I remember is what you just said. The essence is he was so surrendered. He was so surrendered. It's not like, karma sannyas. He was just fully surrendered. And he understood that Lord Chaitanya he's maintaining, the Supreme Lord is maintaining everyone. So with the Supreme Lord is maintaining us, doesn't mean we don't do our prescribed duties. We do our prescribed duties. But he had that absolute faith. And when tested, that's all I remember is what you said. He hit the ground 3 times with a stick. Do you remember any other detail? No?
very faint.
Okay.
And then the other question, Maharaj, is there a description on how he leaves? How Srivasa Thakur leaves his body?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. He was feeling great pain of separation, but how he left, he and his relatives. Now, there's more with Narayani, because he, not just on that one occasion, but on subsequent occasions, Lord Chaitanya showed special affection for Narayani. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left to take sannyas, her family Narayani and family went to Mamgachi. They couldn't bear seeing the same place without Lord Chaitanya. So they moved. And it was in that new place where Narayani gave birth to Vrindavan Das Thakur, Mamgachi. Another nice place. But doesn't answer your question how he left. If you can find the answer, let us know. I know a person who I can ask those two questions, and if he's pretty responsive, Varsana Swami, he's like, immersed in Gaura Leela, and he'll probably respond quickly. Although it's a weekend in New Vrindavan, who knows what's going on over there. Probably pretty busy. Summertime. I'll see if I can get it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. It's so sweet just hearing Lord Chaitanya. And I always get so attracted when we talk about the devotees. It's so moving, that deep love and that deep connection. About this Srivasa Thakur's son's passing away, every time when I hear that pastime, it's a little uncomfortable in the heart. I know Srivasa Thakur's position is different and Lord Chaitanya is very omniscient and he could understand. But in terms of...
On the human side, it doesn't sound very human. On the transcendental side, it's very ecstatic. Srivasa held Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy above everything else. And he wanted nobody. The ladies started to wail, and he told them, "Be quiet, or I'm leaving. We can't interrupt Lord Chaitanya." So it's his mood of giving the space for Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy. Nothing should interfere with Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy. That was his mood. It's not human. It's not human. It's an otherworldly emotion that superseded his human emotions. And then Lord Chaitanya, displayed what he displayed. He had the power to bring him back to life. And he did. And then the pastime is quite similar to the Harsha Shoka, the son of King Chitraketu, and Narad is bringing him back to life. The words spoken by the child, and then he left. So, as it said, the whole experience lifted everyone to the place of transcendental knowledge. So one of the big anchors that holds us back from transcendental knowledge is our attachments. It's a big one. And there's natural attachments. And natural attachments are not to be poo-pooed or cut or denied, but they're to be properly engaged. However, if you're on a platform that Srivasa Thakur is on, there's something more important even than that. Now I'm really curious about this hitting the ground with a stick 3 times. Same. It's just a different expression of the same.
I was thinking of practical application in those pastimes, Guru Maharaj.
Which one?
These kind of pastimes. So we just hear and be appreciative of the mood between the devotees and the Lord, and just appreciate that beyond...
Habi bolo se di namar. When will that day come that our attraction will be the ecstasy of Lord Chaitanya or the ecstasy of Krishna? It's like the happiness of the gopis. It's, that Leela is different, but it's the mood of the happiness. So how do you, in practical application of the happiness of the gopis, how do you practically apply that? Habe bolo sedina. When will that day come? So let me apply myself in foregoing the temporal, flickering, passing tribulations and happinesses and focus on Krishna's happiness. That's the practical application. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. If you could build on what you just shared with us about Srivasa Thakur's mood in terms of his exchange with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there was worship, there was ecstatic kirtan, but on a personal note, it's definitely not awe and reverence, but there was also, some bantering that goes on between Srivasa Thakur and Lord Nityananda as they're going on a mission through the streets for Lord Chaitanya. So what was that mood like? Is there much described in terms of what that mood was like on a personal note?
Well, there was a fluctuation or an intensification, because although he's in the mood of Narada Muni, or he's in the role of a pure devotee. So let's do the Panchatattva part. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar and Srivasa. So Srivasa is the jiva, pure devotee, as Narada is a pure devotee. But Narada was able to move very freely in Krishna's pastimes, in Dwaraka. He went to visit Kamsa. He went to visit Krishna in Vrindavan, encouraging Krishna to go to rescue his mother and father, because he was facilitating Krishna's pastimes again and again and again. That was Narada Muni's role in Krishna's pastimes. He had profound appreciation. Narada had profound appreciation for Krishna in Vrindavan. It just wasn't his mood. There's this nice description in, I think it's Brahma Vivarta Purana, where Narada hears that Krishna has appeared in Vrindavan. He goes to Vrindavan and he's searching for Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He can't find Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Vrinda Devi finds him because she knows of his feelings. And he says, you won't be able to even see his pastimes as long as you're in this, male form. Come with me. She takes him to the southern side of Kusum Sarovar, has him immerse himself in Kusum Sarovar, and comes out Naradi. It's in three different places. Then he can experience. Then she takes him again to another Kund, Narada Kund. He comes out as Narad, then he sits down and writes. So he's able to move, and Srivasa is similarly able to move. He has some appreciation, like this situation where Swarup Damodar is glorifying. Swarup Damodar is only over here. He's with Krishna and the gopis and the Brajabhav. That's him. And hearing that mood, Srivasa accepts. But he also has the other. So he moves. And, Lord Chaitanya, it's very deep. Lord Chaitanya has the capacity to hold the love and affection of everybody. Murari Gupta, who's a lover of Lord Ramachandra, and very attached to Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya is the repository of all those moods. So Srivasa has excessive attachment, exclusive attachment for Lord Chaitanya. And his mood, because that's your question, would range time and circumstance according to inspirations from Lord Chaitanya and his associates. He would move this way and he'd move that way. Lord Chaitanya was the fixed point, and he is a pure devotee who has inclination like Narada has. Narada considers himself unqualified to be in the same position as Gopakumar. Gopakumar, born in Vrindavan, in the mood of a cowherd boy, you're more qualified than me, Narada speaks. You're surely going to end up in Vrindavan with Krishna. I'm not so qualified. And Uddhava says the same thing. So they have knowledge of Krishna's, the special position of Krishna, and they have their own mood that has some fluctuation depending on the circumstance. So one can appreciate his mood based upon the circumstance, and he reflects the circumstance. When the goddess of fortune is coming out of the Jagannath temple, just see how opulent compared to the gopis milking cows and churning yogurt. Look at this opulence. So he has the majesty feature in him. Lord Chaitanya smiles. So when he hears, he's very happy, fully embraces. So the mood can fluctuate based upon association and circumstance. And knowing that, Lord Chaitanya provides different circumstances for him to feel this mood and feel that mood and another mood. He's not the same as Swarup Damodar. Swarup Damodar is exclusively Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. And they're all loving associates. I mean, Lord Chaitanya didn't love one more and another less or something like that. That's part of the beauty and glory of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He was pulling the heartstrings of everybody.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, hearing Amrita Keli's question about the child, Srivasa's child, who was dying and how he reacted, and your explanation about how devotees like that are so absorbed in Krishna, and it supersedes any other love. I was thinking in the Bhagavatam, this is what distinguishes a pure devotee who's made it in the spiritual world is, like the Jai and Vijay who are willing to sacrifice going into the mature world just to fulfill Krishna's desire to fight, or Deviki's willingness to have her children killed just so she could have Krishna as the eighth son. All this is, it feels like, this is the sacrifice that we are lacking, the full absorption and willingness. So how does it make it different from the Braja love? Like, I know Braja love is one step higher. The gopis' love for Krishna is unparalleled.
Yes, more than one step higher.
Yes. So I was thinking if you can just elaborate on that.
You want to hear something about Gopi Bhav?
Yes.
Our acharyas have many things. When our acharyas describe this, they often use poetic language because it's so much beyond our experience. They resort to poetic language because it's beyond our experience. And I attempted in the discussion today at the temple, Uddhava's reaction. Our acharyas give rankings according to rasa. And the outside of Vrindavan, both in terms of knowledge and in terms of intimacy with Krishna, is Uddhava. In their rankings of hierarchies of Vaishnavas, outside of Vrindavan, Uddhava is the highest. I mean, still perfect, more perfect, most perfect, but he's in the more perfect platform than any other Vaishnav. That's part of the conclusion of Brihat Bhagavatamrita Part 1. The Uddhava's at the top. When Narada is searching for the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Lord, it's Uddhava. And Uddhava understands beyond my comprehension is the intensity of the love of the residents of Vrindavan for Krishna. So the superlative position of the residents of Vrindavan is the intensity of their love. So much so that when Krishna shows his divinity, they can't see it. Or if Krishna arranges for them to see it, he then quickly withdraws that realization. Like the nice example, you like Krishna book, you like Bhagavatam, so you'll like the story. The pastime, one of the ones I like is Varuna, the messengers of Varuna kidnapping Nanda Maharaj. And when Krishna comes to know, Krishna knows where to go. He goes to the abode of Yamaraj, the abode of Varuna. And when he goes to the abode of Varuna, Varuna knows who he is. And he stops everything. And right in front of Nanda Maharaj, he worships Krishna. And Nanda Maharaj is watching his son being worshipped by this supremely opulent, heavenly opulent, not supremely opulent, heavenly opulent Varuna. And Krishna smiles and says, I'd like to take my father back. So he given his father back. And when Nanda Maharaj gets back, he has a little village gathering, village elder gathering. Let me tell you what happened. The opulence of Varuna was like this, and Varuna was worshiping my son. So who is my son? And they start to speculate. And they come to the conclusion, well, maybe he's the personality of Godhead, or maybe if he is, then maybe he'll be kind enough to show us his abode, the spiritual world. They don't say that to Krishna. Krishna knows, so Krishna decides, okay, I'll show them the spiritual world. He takes them to a particular place along the bank of the Jamuna. They take their sacred bath. He lifts them out of that water and shows them the spiritual world. And what do they see? They see Krishna. They see themselves. They don't see the others of Vrindavan. They just see themselves. And they see the personified Vedas chanting his glories. And then what happens? They forget everything. Because Krishna was fulfilling their desire, but their love is so strong, they can't even hold that one. Etc., etc., etc. Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill. Krishna does all kinds of things, and they can't see him as the personality of Godhead because their love is so strong. That love, that strength of their love is so strong that it eclipses his majesty. So for most of us, majesty, please, if we see some miracle or something like that, then we have it nourishes our faith. But the residents of Vrindavan, they see miracles all the time. Or from time to time at least. They see, things that just people don't see. And they're not bewildered by it. They just think how wonderful is Krishna. And then the intimacy where they can challenge him. Like we had this whole discussion about Bhishma. Bhishma was challenging Krishna. But the cowherd boys challenge Krishna every day. And the gopis challenge Krishna every day. And they love Krishna. It's like It's another realm of spiritual perfection. So now, what's the practical, where is she, Amrita Kelly, what's the practical application of hearing all that? Get out your binoculars, and they're way up there. I don't have the capacity to even aspire for something like as elevated, but that's what we're doing by being followers of Lord Chaitanya. So we admire them and sing their praises and hear about them and try especially through our acharyas to understand the exaltedness of their love for him. Besides, their pastimes are charming. The pastime between Krishna and all the residents of Vrindavan. You know, the Bhagavatam unfolds with Krishna's babyhood, Krishna's childhood, so the parental exchange, and then the cowherd boys exchange, and then the young gopis exchange, and then it keeps unfolding and unfolding. The levels of intensity and intimacy in their exchanges with Krishna. It's astounding. And our acharyas help us. They relish, and their relishing is to help us relish. So reading their writings helps us to appreciate the special love that Krishna has and exhibits in his association with the residents of Vrindavan. Something? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It's a two-part question. The first one is, sometimes we see Krishna, like the example where you gave, he protected the daughters of one of the devotees coming as a boat. And sometimes Krishna does not give that protection. How do we understand why Krishna, even in Mahabharata, the same thing arises? Sometimes he protects, sometimes he doesn't protect. And the second part of my question is...
Let's just do one part at a time. Even when apparently there's not protection, it's another kind of protection. That is increasing our intensity of calling because circumstance didn't get better. No, and in that particular example, Lord Chaitanya was indicating his majesty, his omniscience, his capacity and willingness to protect his beloved devotee and thus his daughters. But that was just on the note of the intimacy. Maybe just like Shankachuta, and as he was brazenly just ignoring Krishna and Balaram and trying to take the gopis away from them, and the gopis were in great distress. Krishna, stop this demon. So he protected them. Now your question is, when it happens that it appears that Krishna isn't protecting us, how are we to understand that, and what's the division between when Krishna does and when Krishna doesn't? My response is that even when it appears that Krishna doesn't, he is. That's just an example of Srivasa Thakura's son died. Why didn't he protect him? He could have. He's all-powerful, and he's the son of Srivasa. So why didn't he protect him? He engaged him in some service in some other place. And who knows what that other place was or that other service? We don't know. But he was directing him to go to some other place. So, we could have protected him. So it's a material yardstick to say the protection isn't there. Difficulties come, and when those difficulties come, and they keep coming and they keep coming and they don't stop, and it's like, it's Krishna, you abandoned me. It's not like that. The opportunity for deepening one's shelter and having another service in another place may very well be Krishna's plan. And devotion is going to determine whether one sees it as, misfortune that Krishna didn't check, or misfortune that Krishna arranged to move me to some better situation or another situation of service. In other words, Krishna is kind. Even when it appears that misfortune is what's happening. Second question.
Yes, Maharaj. Now, when circumstances arise, you often, as sadhakas, we have two choices. One is go to Krishna, ask for help. Other is Krishna willing and be detached. So, for example, Srivasa Thakur, he didn't want to disturb the kirtan. He was totally detached from the circumstance.
Not that he was totally detached. He just placed the priority of the ecstasy of Lord Chaitanya above everything else. This is this emotional intelligence thing that you just sent me. You have, when you have priorities, it's not like you become numb to other things, but when something becomes so important to you, other things take their secondary or just fade in their importance to you. It doesn't mean that you're unaware of them. I mean, there's chaos in the world today. And if you just meditate on the chaos in the world today, you can go nuts. Real easy, try it. Or become angry, or become whatever, like people are doing. Over anything and everything, and just...
So, which stands better, at least from Krishna's perspective, us reaching out to Krishna for help versus accepting the situation?
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. You can accept the situation and reach to Krishna for help. The situation is what it is. And then that registers. And then what are you going to do about not only your emotion of not liking the situation that is, but what are you going to do about the situation? And your response to the situation, because the situation may be just out of your control. So at least you can manage your emotion in terms of, okay, how am I going to respond to this situation that's mad? And then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. So they're not, accepting doesn't mean you just become a punching bag. Accepting means it is what it is. And now, what's the proper response? And ultimately, what's the spiritual situation of the soul in relation to the Supreme Soul in this or in any situation? Where's my shelter?
Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
We're attached to the temporary, so we get moved by the temporary. And then it looks like an either or choice. We just become a punching bag, or I pray to Krishna to help change the situation. Relief is not necessarily the situation changes. Relief is your relationship with Krishna becomes stronger. And when your relationship with Krishna becomes stronger, then comes the strength to be an instrument to make the situation better. Because Krishna reciprocates with those that have shelter in him. But it's not a business deal. I'll do this and you do that, right? Yeah, online. So,
there are two questions from Sri Radhika Matasi Maharaj. The first one was, why was it that Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy was disturbed by the presence of Srivasa Thakur's mother-in-law since he was non-devotee? And later on, Lord Chaitanya would dance ecstatically in public during Ratha Yatra, where I assume not everyone was a devotionally inclined.
I'm not sure the first part. Were you clear about the?
Mahaprabhu was dancing in more restricted, constrained, devotionally.
That was initially. Then later went outside the four walls of Srivasa Thakur's home, and all over town and all over the place. Not only Ratha Yatra, but all over the countryside. But initially it was incubation chamber time. And that the example, not sure what the example she's giving, but the brahmachari who thought that he could achieve perfection by drinking only milk and being austere. I'm feeling no ecstasy. There's just someone here that shouldn't be here. It was a lesson. Not like his ecstasy is dependent upon who's in the audience. It was a lesson. Next.
Question, Maharaj. Narada Muni, a Pakka Brahmachari, expanded as Srivasa Thakur, a householder in Lord Chaitanya's Leela. What can we understand from this about the norms of rasa?
About the?
Norms of rasa. Norms.
Namaparad? The norms of?
Rasa. And expansions that transcendental associates of Krishna exhibit in expanding in Lord Chaitanya's Leelas.
Do you understand the question? Can you just say back the question in a different language?
So he's a Pakka Brahmachari, Narada Muni.
Narada Muni is a Pakka Brahmachari. He sure is.
He expanded as, Srivasa Thakur, a householder.
Okay.
So how do we understand the rasa?
The householder, the Pakka Brahmachari becomes a householder.
Rasa being changed.
She's asking what are the norms of rasa?
The norms of rasa. Well, it's the emphasis is it's not varnashram related. It's bhakti related, and bhakti supersedes or transcends or goes beyond varna or ashram. She'll send me a text message later. She'll clarify your question. Okay, and we'll cover it tomorrow, along with the beating the ground 3 times with a stick.
We found the reference in Chaitanya Bhagavat for the 3.
Oh, you found it? Really? How'd you find it?
Google.
It's not Veda-based, but it's Google? It was not Veda-based, but it was Google?
It says Veda-based first, but the Veda-based online doesn't have Chaitanya Bhagavat. So,
Okay, you Googled it.
So
Go ahead, Google.
Share the
Go, Google.
So this is directly from Chaitanya Bhagavata translation.
Please.
5th chapter of Bhakti-Yoga. One day the Lord called Srivasa Pandit aside and asked him confidentially about some family matters. The Lord said, I see you never go anywhere. How will you manage to make ends meet in the family? And how are you doing it presently? Srivasa Pandit replied, My Lord, I have not the heart to go anywhere. The Lord gently prodded the subject further. You have a large family to maintain. How then will you look after them? Srivasa Pandit said, Whatever comes because of my fate will certainly come as a provision. The Lord then said, Then Srivas, take sannyas. Srivas replied, That is not possible for me. The Lord said, On one hand, you refuse to accept sannyas. On the other hand, you do not go to beg alms. How do you plan to maintain your family? I'm unable to understand you. Nowadays, if one does not make any effort of going hither and thither, then nothing comes of its own. Under the circumstances, please tell me what you propose to do. Srivasa Pandit said, clapping his hands thrice. So apparently in the Bhagavad, it's not hitting with the stick. Here is my explanation. 1, 2, 3. The Lord insisted, Please explain properly why you clapped thrice and what does 1, 2, 3 imply? Srivasa Pandit replied calmly, I have taken a solemn vow that if after fasting for 3 meals I do not get any food, then I will surely tie a stone around my neck and drown myself in the Ganga. As soon as the Lord heard these words, he roared like thunder and said, What did you say, Srivasa Pandit? You'll be fasting because of lack of food? Even if Lakshmi Devi by some rare chance has to go begging, your family will never experience poverty. Srivasa Pandit, you have already forgotten what I've said in the Bhagavad Gita 9:22. Those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. One who's fixed in undeviating meditation on me has never to beg at anyone's steps. All the mystic potencies automatically manifest in him. My devotees are fully protected by my Sudarshan disc at all times. And even at the time of total annihilation of this material universe, they remain transcendental and unaffected. The Lord continued, One who simply remembers my devotee, I take responsibility of maintaining him. The servitor of my servitor is dear to me, and he certainly attains my shelter. My servitors need not have any concern about their maintenance since I am taking their responsibility on my shoulders. So Srivasa Pandit, you just remain happily in your house and every requirement will automatically come to you. I'm blessing you and Sri Advaita with the boon that none of you will ever be affected by old age, debility, or senility. In the last paragraph, the Lord then called for Ramai Pandit and told him, Listen, Ramai Pandit, I instruct you to always serve your elder brother as if he were the Supreme Lord. Know also that you are as dear to me as my very life, so I want that you never deviate from this service to Srivasa Pandit. Both Srivasa Pandit and Ramai Pandit were overwhelmed with divine bliss. The Blessed Lord had filled their hearts with indescribable joy by Lord Chaitanya's causeless mercy. Even now, in some past time, all requirements are coming on their own to Srivasa Pandit's doorsteps.
Amrita Kali, what's the practical application of that one? You who like practical applications of lessons. Just quit your job, right? Lock the door and expect Lord Chaitanya to provide the provisions. Huh?
He might as well.
Well, maybe he's doing already. Except that, if one is not thinking in terms of acting as the doer and the creator of the results, then who is? So it's service. Okay, one down and one to go. Compliments of Mr. Google. Anyone else? Yes, behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for that beautiful lecture on Srivasa Thakur. I was just trying to understand the parts where you explained about different devotees or different people committing offenses to Srivas and how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took it very seriously.
Yes.
In a practical application point of view, sometimes we deal with several devotees, and sometimes, even though it is not our intention, they actually feel hurt or offended because of our some behavior or some words. So what is considered as an offense, and how to deal with such situations, Maharaj, where we are not intending to commit any offense to any devotee, but still they are actually feeling some negative feeling about us.
You ready for the standard answer? It depends. In Madhurya Kandambani, there's the understanding given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. When it does come to your attention that someone is feeling offended by something you said or did or didn't do or didn't say, then you go to that person. And if they don't offer forgiveness, then you let some time pass and you sincerely wish for them and try again and then try again. After several times, if there's still no forgiveness, no change of heart, then you take full shelter of the holy name. But those are the first steps. Now, supposing it's somebody that feels offended that you don't know that they're feeling offended, whether it was a misunderstanding of something they thought you said or did or something like that, but you don't know about it. So what are you supposed to do in those circumstances? That's your question. One answer was given by Prabhupada when giving it during a nectar devotion class. Since this is a serious offense against the holy name, what should one do? I've made so many offenses I don't even know what they are. Prabhupada's answer, therefore we say every day, Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha. Now in our temples, that's one of the things that we, after reciting after Tulsi Puja, commonly in temples, reciting the 10 offenses, and then the Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha means all the people that are, all the devotees of the Lord who are here and there that we have offended, we offer our obeisances and request their forgiveness for our offenses, unknowingly rendered. And is it possible? The answer is no. Is it possible to live your life where you don't make any offense, or even unknowingly people think that you have misunderstood your intentions and your words, etc.? So so it's not just a mechanical recitation of something, but it's offering respects to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, knowing that they're very dear to the Lord. And therefore, we're seeking even, for unknowing offenses. And when something does come to your attention, someone is feeling they've misunderstood your words or your intentions, you go and make amends. You have online something over there? No. I think we're done. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.